Hi guys, and welcome to this week's Josh's vlog. Once again, I hope you've all had a really good week and you haven't been too cold as the temperatures have plummeted, and that you've been able to enjoy the snow for a little bit. Today's topic, I've been listening to some podcasts recently, specifically of a guy called Tim Ross, who's an American preacher that I discovered at Momentum one year, and I absolutely loved his preaching. So since then, I've been listening occasionally to his sort of online podcasts. And I was listening to one recently, a couple of weeks ago, and he spoke of a Hebrew word that the Jewish faith still uses. And I explained a little bit what it is, but when I heard about this word and its meaning, it really struck me. So that's kind of what I want to share with you today. And this word that he talks about is Dayenu. Okay, it's a Hebrew word, and it means that would have sufficed. And I think when I heard this initially, my kind of skeptical brain, when that would have sufficed, it kind of brought images of people who, you know, maybe someone who's trying to do too much for you and it's quite overbearing, and you kind of sit there going, what you did first, that would have been enough. You don't need to do that. Please stop. That would have been enough. Leave it at that kind of thing. But actually, this word is a way that the Jewish faith is a word they use to praise God and to remind them of all the incredible things that God has done for them. And that's what it means. It would have sufficed. They sing a song called Dayenu, and it's about, they go back through all of the things that God did to kind of free his people from Egypt. And they look at each individual thing that he did and said, if you had have only done this, it would have sufficed. It would have been enough. And then it kind of goes through and it kind of tells the story like this. And after every line, they sing a whole chorus of just this word, Dayenu. It would have sufficed. It would have been enough. And it was really powerful listening to this. Like, wow, you know, it forces us to think, actually, looking back at my life, all the things that God has done for me individually are so powerful that would have been enough by itself to convince me to have a relationship with God and to convince me of the love that God has for me. So what I wanted to do quickly is just read you the lyrics to the song. I won't do the whole chorus because they just sing Dayenu over and over again. But I just wanted to read you some of the lyrics so you get a gist of it. So the lyrics go, if he had have brought us out of Egypt and had not carried out judgments against them, Dayenu, it would have sufficed. If he had carried out judgments against them and not against our idols, it would have sufficed. If he had destroyed their idols and had not smitten their firstborn, it would have sufficed. If he had smitten their firstborn and had not given us their wealth, it would have sufficed. If he had split the sea for us and had not taken us through it on dry land, it would have sufficed. If he had taken us through it on dry land and had not drowned our oppressors in it, it would have sufficed. If he had drowned our oppressors in it and had not supplied our needs in the desert for 40 years, it would have sufficed. If he had supplied our needs in the desert for 40 years and had not fed us the manna, it would have sufficed. If he had fed us the manna and not given us the Shabbat, it would have sufficed. If he had given us the Shabbat and had not brought us before Mount Sinai, it would have sufficed. If he had brought us before Mount Sinai and had not given us the Torah, it would have sufficed. If he had given us the Torah and had not brought us into the promised land, it would have sufficed. If he had not brought us into the promised land and not built for us the holy temple, it would have sufficed. Now just have a think about how powerful that is. This amazing thing that we still go back to of the promised land and being freed from Egypt. They're saying, if you hadn't have actually taken us into the promised land, everything you'd done before would have been enough. If you hadn't have fed us manna in the desert for 40 years, everything you'd done previously would have been enough. If you hadn't have split the sea, one of the most famous things that God did in the Bible, if you hadn't have done that, everything you had have done before that would have been enough. So what I want to sort of encourage you to think about today is, what are those things that God has done for you that are enough, that would have been enough if that was the only thing God has done? And I think it's in this time of COVID, We're always looking about, what is God going to do next? Where is God in all of this? Rather than looking back at what God has already brought us through, and kind of thinking about in 5 years' time, how are we going to look at this? And saying, if God had only brought us through this with our job still, that would have been enough. If he only brought us through this with a roof over our head, that would have been enough. If he had only brought us through this without any serious illnesses or complications, that would have been enough. And all of these things we can think about. So I want to encourage us to think about that now, but also think back on our entire lives and to write our own Dayenu song. So I've done the same thing. I've written kind of just a few lines of my Dayenu song to kind of get you thinking about it and get you kind of understanding what it might look like. And I just wanted to read you. I've only done 4 lines, but I just wanted to kind of share that with you so you know where to start. So if he had only restored my dad's faith but had not restored my relationship with him, it would have been sufficient. If he had only restored my relationship with my dad but had not kept our family so close throughout, it would have been sufficient. If he had only rescued me from my slump after uni and had not led me back to youth work, it would have been sufficient. If he had only died on a cross and resurrected in order that my sins are paid for and that I can live free, that would have been sufficient. Now, I'd encourage you to use that last line as a last line in all of yours, or the first line, because ultimately that's the ultimate Dayenu that we're looking at. If he had only sacrificed his life and died on a cross for us, that would have been sufficient. Everything, all the blessings he pours out after that are a bonus, because that in itself would have been sufficient to convince me to have a relationship with the God who loves me.